Okay, so our user registration is complete, right? So our user registration is complete, but you saw that we used our cookies and we are actually setting up tokens. So why are we setting up tokens and why are we using cookies? So we have to store our authentication token somewhere to then we can verify our token. So why are we using authentication token and where are we setting up in our cookies? So if we go to our storage, so as you can know, our code, our JavaScript codes do not have permanent storage, so you cannot store data in your code. So there are multiple ways you can set up data. Our browser provides some storage. You can set up small data in your browser. So the browser provides three kind of storage. We have our local storage, our session storage, and our cookies. So what is the difference between these three? So the lifespan. So local storage data is permanent. That means you until you delete the data will stay in your browser according to the domain. And session storage, session data is session based. That means if I go to this tab and when I close this tab, this session will be ended and everything inside the session storage will be deleted. And cookies, we can set up expiration date in our cookies. Okay. Then we have our storage size. So for both local storage and session storage, we have 5 to 10 megabytes of data. And for cookies, we only have a limited storage that we have 4 KB per cookie. And accessibility, we can access the local storage data from our JavaScript code on our client side, and same with the session storage. But we have with cookies, actually our server, both our server and our client side can have access to the cookies. So data sent with HTTP, we do not send the data in our local storage and our session storage with API calls. But with cookies, if we set up any data in our cookie and from the same domain where we saved the cookies, if we uh, sorry, so from the same domain, if we say make an API call, and we can set up that the which API call our cookies is sent to the backend. So that is another feature with cookies. And for use cases, long-term data storage, that means you want to save any long-term data, right? For example, for our e-commerce site, for our cart, right? So the user, when the user adds some product to our cart, we want to use our local storage. And for our session storage, we want to temporary session-based data, right? For example, I mean, we are in our UI, let's say we have a multi-page form, right? There are multiple steps in a form, and when the user enters the first form and first step and goes to the second and the third, and then suddenly he reloads. So after he reloads, if you do not handle it properly, the user will be back to the first form. So you can set it up in your session storage that which form, which step of the form the user is in, and then you can handle that. And if the user closes the tab, then you can delete it. So that is the use of our temporary session. And for cookies, we are using it for session management, authentication, and tracking. So we are setting up our authentication in our cookies. Okay, so what is API authentication? API authentication and authorization is user management process of verifying the identity of a user or application that is requesting access to an API. So to understand authentication and authorization better, you have to ask two questions. For authentication, you ask why. You ask who. That means who is the user, who is making the API call. If the user is registered or we have a user has access to our API. And for authorization, after the user authentication is complete, authorization is what other functions or features the user has access to. So that is how you simply explain authorization and authentication. And for API authentication, you can use cookie-based authentication. That means, as I said earlier, cookies are sent to server with each API call if you set it up properly. And for example, using the login information, the user tries to log in. Okay. The server creates a session with a session ID after verifying the using the supplied credentials. Okay, the browser sends a session ID. We can store this session ID in our cookie. So upon subsequent request, the session IDs on the client and server sides are compared. That means the cookie is sent to the backend with our API, and the backend can handle the authorization and verify the user. And the session is ended both client and server side if the user logs out of the application. Okay. Some advantages of cookies are very little space. Cookies are simple to use and apply. They also have the ability to revoke the validity. And some disadvantages would be cookies are vulnerable to XSS or CSRF attacks, and also contain sensitive information that the user, which makes them target for attackers. So we have to keep it in mind when setting up cookies. And we also can use authentication using tokens that, for example, our backend is sending us JSON web tokens or JWT tokens. And JWT tokens is most widely used application authentication method. And further, there are standalone tokens having usernames, roles, and right. That means we can set up our other information inside the token, our encrypted token. And it is very simple. The server creates a JWT token and sends it to the client with secret information. We store it somewhere, and with each API call, we send the token to our backend that we did. If we go to our Axios instance, so as you can see, after our verify is complete, I am setting up the cookie as myshop.auth in our token. We are setting the token in our cookie. And with each subsequent API call, that means whenever I am using the Axios instance, I am sending the cookie to our backend. So now you understand the relationship, how we are handling our authentication. I am getting the authentication token and setting up in our cookies, and with each subsequent API call, I am sending it to our backend with the help of our Axios instance. And the backend will handle the authorization and authentication. So if I go to our page and if we go to our console, okay. So after you come to your console, you can go to application, and here is your cookies, your local storage, and your session storage. And inside our cookie, as you can see, myshop.auth, we have a cookie set up that we set up after the user verification is complete. This is the myshop.auth. This is our cookie that we are setting up with JS cookies. And then we are getting it from our cookies when making an API call. Okay, so that's how you integrate your authentication tokens. That's how you get your authentication tokens, and you send your authentication tokens. And just setting up the authentication token won't work, right? Why are we setting up the authentication token? And what is the benefit of our authentication token? So according to our authentication token, after coming to the browser, we are taking the authentication token and verifying the user. And if the user is logged in, we are providing them some extra features or functionalities, right? Okay.